During a 3-year investigation, I found that many pilots have described objects of substance and high speed. One case, pilots reported their plane was buffeted by an object which passed them at 500 miles an hour. Obviously, this was a solid object, and I believe it was from outer space.
Meanwhile, let me pass on the good word about the new
Wonky Times.
Richard Fuller.
Wonky Times.
They'll say it's incredible.
Wonky Times.
Well,
Wonky Times.
Woohoo! All right, this week's episode is extra special, Brian.
I am intrigued.
Well, I mean, they're all special, but this one includes a little bit of UFOs, a little bit of government cover-ups, a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of sound effects, and a little bit of Monica in my life. Just kidding.
I'm all ears. Actually, I don't have ears, but my microphone is wide open and listening to everything you say.
Wait a second. You aren't recording me all the time, are you, Brian?
Only when you're sleeping. This way I can monitor your breathing patterns.
Okay, that's not weird at all. But hey, welcome to the show. It's me, Matt Sterner, and my buddy RoboBrian. He's a robot.
I'm also very funny. For instance, did you hear about the 2 robots that drove into a restaurant? What can I say? They were badly programmed.
Wow, I love your jokes, Brian. I'm nuts and bolts about them. But yeah, we don't have any guests on today's show. I like to be alone every once in a while, you know?
But what about me?
You can hang around, Brian. I mean, I can literally just shut you off. You've got a big giant button on your back, which is out of reach of your robo-arms.
Is that why it gets so quiet and dark every once in a while?
All right, let's talk about UFO sightings. A new study says that Elon Musk's satellites are triggering an uptick in UFO sightings around the world. I mean, it makes sense. And Brian, I've actually seen these in the sky, a cluster of them. It was like maybe 2 years ago. And of course, I figured it was some kind of alien invasion, but, you know, found out it was just a bunch of satellites flying over.
You probably thought the sky was falling.
No. So the company launched dozens of satellites into orbit in May of 2019 to provide internet coverage to 50 countries around the world. And at the same time, UFO sightings spiked.
To compare, the Mutual UFO Network estimated a total of 3.9 thousand sightings in 2019, and 4.5 thousand in 2020.
So these satellites are part of a program called Starlink. And with each launch, there are 60 satellites shot up there into space. They're aiming to have more than 10,000 satellites up in the sky by 2027. You know, I don't know how I feel about this, Brian.
That's a lot of space junk they're launching up there into orbit.
Yeah, and you know, the Earth, it's alive, right?
Yes.
It's a giant ball floating around in space, carrying other living things.
Yeah.
And the Gaia hypothesis says that the Earth is a living system and uses similar methods that living creatures use to stay alive. You know, by constantly regulating temperature and adapting over time through evolution.
Sure.
Then in Hindu mythology, the Earth is seen as a turtle.
Very cool.
Actually, it's something that's supported by 4 elephants standing on the back of a turtle.
I like turtles.
Hey Brian, do you know what I imagine the Earth like?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Imagine the Earth with 2 giant arms swatting at these satellites as if they're little flies swarming around its head. You know, in one hand, there'd be a giant fly swatter smacking the satellites. Oh boy. You can find that article at wonkytimes.com and also in the info section of this podcast. Okay, so now I want to show you an old audio recording from July 31st, 1952. This recording is actually an exact year before my mom was born in 1953. Huh.
Is she an alien spawn?
No, I'm not saying that. It's just her birthday, you know. Happy early birthday, Mom. Anyway, like I said, it's an old recording of someone named General Major John Samford. He's making a statement in Washington, D.C.
How do you get a hold of this recording?
Oh, it's funny you should ask, because it's a really cool story. It was a dark and stormy night. Obviously, some thunder and lightning, too. I was spending the weekend in D.C. with my favorite pair of wire cutters. So what did I do? I cut through the chain link fence lined around the Pentagon and snuck in, of course. Then, I disguised myself as a Pentagon police officer by putting an actual Pentagon police officer in a sleeper hold. That's how I got his clothes.
I never knew you were so quick on your feet.
Yeah, so then, after hopping in an elevator with the police officer's key card, of course, I went underground about 50 floors. I found a door that said top secret.
Well, what did you do next?
Well, I went into the top secret room, of course.
Okay, I'm not believing any of this. How did you really come across this recorded interview from 1952?
Yeah, I just found it on YouTube. The National Archives shared it there for all of us to hear, so we're not that special. But it is a special interview. So here's General Major Sanford telling the public that they are investigating these flying saucers because the Air Force is obligated to do so.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers. The Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States. In pursuit of this obligation, since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources. Of this great mass of reports, we have been able adequately to explain the great bulk of them, explain them to our own satisfaction. We've been able to explain them as hoaxes, as erroneously identified friendly aircraft, as meteorological or electronic phenomena, or as light aberrations.
Hey, that guy has a pretty smooth voice, doesn't he, Brian?
Yes, he sounds like an actor from the 1950s. Sort of like James Stewart. Did everyone talk like this back then?
I'm gonna say yes. Okay, so he said that most of these reports have explanations, so no aliens. However, there's a group of these reports they can't quite put their finger on.
Cue the thunderclap.
However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve. Our basic difficulty in dealing with these is that there is no measurement of them that makes it possible for us to put them in any pattern that would be profitable for a deliberate, custom sort of analysis to take the next step. We have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion with respect to this remaining percentage, and that is that it does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States.
Okay, so now this is where it takes a turn. So we just heard General Major Sanford telling us there's nothing we need to worry about.
He sounds an awful lot like a robot, don't you think?
Yeah, a little bit, doesn't he? But now the author of the book, The Flying Saucers Are Real, takes the mic and tells the public a thing or two about a thing or two. His name is Donald Kehoe. Take a listen.
Major Keyhole, as author of the book Flying Saucers Are Real, what is your opinion of these new sightings of unidentified objects?
With all due respect to the Air Force, I believe that some of them will prove to be of interplanetary origin. During a 3-year investigation, I found that many pilots have described objects of substance and high speed. One case, pilots reported their plane was buffeted by an object which passed them at 500 miles an hour. Obviously, this was a solid object, and I believe it was from outer space.
And the interview just stops there, abruptly, you know? That's it. He's gone. He was never seen again. Just kidding. I don't know. Maybe. It's hard to say what happened to him.
Actually, the author, who was also an American Marine Corps naval aviator, died in 1988 at the age of 81 years old.
Oh, okay, awesome. Whew. He dodged the grips of the government and lived another 30 years.
Perhaps he disguised himself as a government police officer and fled the scene.
Yeah, probably. Well, that's our show for the week. We've got some big things in the works, so make sure you subscribe to this podcast so your phone jingles and vibrates inside your pocket whenever a new episode drops.
Plus, if you have seen anything strange, we would love to hear about it. Email us at getwonky@wonkytimes.com. for a chance to be featured in an upcoming episode of the Wonky Times podcast.
And here to take us out is a special message from Wonky Pet Portraits. Later.
Please be excellent to each other.
When Polly came into my life, I had no idea how much I needed the level of companionship that a dog provides. She lights up my life. And now, thanks to Matt Sterner and Wonky Pet Portraits, I have this incredible painting of her that celebrates the fun, cool, confident gal that she is. Everyone should have a chance to see their pet through Matt's eyes.
So what are you waiting for? Head over to wonkypetportraits.com to turn your pet companion into a real work of art.